Thank you for joining me, guys, on part 2 of my front axle rebuild for my 1994 Toyota Land Cruiser. I decided to put the dial indicator on the case to measure for backlash. And guess what, guys? We were outside of specifications. The FSM calls for anywhere between 6 to 8 thousandths of an inch of backlash, and we were north of that. So I took several readings in 3 different locations, and we measured right around 11 to 12 thousandths of an inch of backlash. I mean, it's not excessive, but still not within spec. So what we're going to do, I'm going to scribe a little line. Let's see, I just got to pick a spot. And what that's going to do is going to help me with the carrier bearings preload. I'll just crank that sucker down back to that mark. And we're still going to check carrier bearing preload. So this little bracket actually prevents the spanner nut from rotating. It's a keeper. Oh, there we go. Well, what I like about this third member is it's pretty straightforward. There's no way of mixing up your bearing caps. As you can see, this bearing cap is proprietary to this side. Your bolt hole for your key lock mounts towards the outside, so there's no way of mixing up the direction either. Here you can see how the radius is smaller on this end and the radius is larger on this end. Larger bearing cap as well. And we will keep the bolts keep everything together. Here's our spanner nut. It's really gritty in here. Stinks. Smells pretty bad. So there's your larger bearing cap. So we can pull this out. Yep. Here you have it, guys. Drop the pinion. That's okay, it's gonna get replaced anyways. Alright, so here we have our dry flange. Looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove this plug, and that'll give us access to a roll pin. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. It's actually aluminum. So we're gonna actually clean this up, and we'll put new sealant around there. This is not a worm gear like I thought. Very interesting design. The gears are actually on the fork. Okay, so we have this indicator switch and 27mm wrench. Should pull that sucker out. It's always best to use a wrench on these switches, because with the socket there's a good chance you will break that plastic piece. Those are super fragile. There it is, guys. Indicator switch. We'll clean all this stuff up. Okay guys, we're going to dry this inner pinion bearing race out of the case. That should conclude this assembly. This is the inner bearing race. It's a massive race. Look at the size of this thing. And just like the bearing, it's got a lot of wear and tear. So this is no good. It's pretty much bare now. We've gutted the whole thing out, and we're gonna go ahead and clean this. Get all that dirt, grime, metal particles out of it. So we have a nice clean slate to work with. Okay, so we're gonna remove these ring gear bolts. But first we gotta pull back some of these tabs. Alright guys, so we're going to use this bearing puller to remove this bearing. Alright, so captured the bearing. We're gonna have to use this type of puller just because this bearing's so freaking large. We'll see if this works. Freaking made in China. So now we have enough space below the bearing where these clamshell clamps can slide underneath. So we'll put our spacer. Clamshells and a retainer. Alright, so now we're going to tighten this sucker. It seems to be doing the trick just by hand. There we have it. There are two halves to this case. I really want to get in there and look at those thrust washers and clean them all out, you know. You want these two halves to go back the way they came apart. I don't see any reference lines. So we're gonna scribe. I'm gonna mark this. It almost resembles like a U-joint. We're ready to take these two halves apart. Here is your side gear, and there is a thrust washer on here, or a shim. So down here we have our spider gears, and you want to make sure keep everything the way you pulled it out. So you have your spider gear, the little spider gear shaft. This will be the cross shaft. And here's your thrust washer. This is what I was concerned about. You know, once you get little fine particles in here, this will cause major wear. Side gear. And same thing like the other side, there is a washer. It's very important we get nice clean. Okay, so we're going to start assembly. This. Put this surface down here. You know what, we're going to apply a little bit here too. Super smooth. Do the same to the inside here. There's my mark right there. And okay, so there it is. We're gonna go in this direction. And there you have it. We're going to go ahead and torque these down to 43 foot-pounds of torque in a crisscross pattern. So we're going to go stick this thing in the oven and make it expand. So it's just slide on there a lot easier. Just came out of the oven. Oh wow, it slid right on there. Yeah. Wow. Damn. So we're gonna stick one bolt without getting burned here. There we go. Okay, so once the breeding gear cools down to about room temperature, then it's a good time to go ahead and torque these down. We're going to torque these down to 81 foot-pounds of torque in a crisscross pattern. You slowly want to work your way up to 81 foot-pounds. Okay, so we have all these torqued down to 81 foot-pounds. Now we're going to fold up these little small tabs here. So I have these old races and old bearings that I kind of just kept along the years after many rebuilds, and this is what I use for spacers. As for here, you can see where the bearings actually passed. It's past this area here, so you want to be able to get past that with your driver. Alright, let's see what happens. Alright. It's always best to coat the bearings with some fresh gear oil. So I want to give a shout out to 510_JK for making a very good comment, and I've been thinking about your comment, dude. I've been taking that into consideration. What he suggested was the possibility of an old axle shaft seal dislodging itself or being knocked into the axle tube and somehow, you know, working its way down into the ring and pinion area, and that's a very, very strong possibility. I did put the fragments side by side with a brand new axle shaft seal, and the dimensions were pretty close. It was almost dead on. Alright guys, thanks for joining me for part 2. Be on the lookout for part 3 and 4 on my front axle rebuild. Stay tuned.